matter of the people of the state of California versus Orenthal James Simpson, case number BA096.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you
And we're
can do
back,
for your
Taylor.
country.
Taylor, you're chipper as ever.
I am.
You're just a happy chipper person.
No, you know me. Yeah. Yeah. I'm like, what do I have to tell you that I haven't just told you in the past 2 minutes?
There's
I'm
nothing.
like, it
There's
looks like it might
nothing. We're like-
rain.
It's
Yeah.
like an old married couple being like, well, we just ran out of things to talk
I
about.
don't know. I just talked to you 5 seconds ago. You're still here?
No, that's good. That's good. So why don't you do this? Why don't you go ahead and introduce us? I have a really interesting story today.
Yay. Cool. I'm excited. Welcome to Doomed to Fail. We are the podcast that brings you twice weekly history's most notorious failures and greatest disasters. I am Taylor, joined by Fars, and Fars has something exciting to share with us today.
Yeah, it's a really fun story. Oh, no, it's not fun. It's a horrible story. It's a really good doomed to fail story, though. Like it actually like hits on all cylinders for what the premise of the show is supposed to be. And it's
Whoa.
also terrifying. And really the starting point for even looking into this was just like thinking about the worst possible ways of like dying. Like
Mhm.
what are the worst conceivable ways? And I stumbled on a story and I think it might have to be in the top 5 worst ways I've ever heard anybody dying. So
Oh my
that's
God.
what we're going to talk about today.
Cool.
So
For us, not for them.
yeah, not for this poor guy whose name is John Edward Jones. And it has to do with his ultimate demise and fate in a cave in the caving systems of Utah. So so let's get into what this cave actually is. So as a starting point, this cave in Utah, it's called Nutty Putty Cave. It was discovered in 1960 by a guy named Dale Green. And
Would it be
he
funny
called...
if his name was Dale Nutty Putty?
So it is a stupid name, but like the reason it's a stupid name is because the texture of what's inside of it is this like clay stuff that's like silly putty. And originally he was actually going to call it silly putty. Then he thought that that's too stupid, and so he just went with Nutty Putty. So
Dale Nutty Putty.
So because of the way the cave was formed, and again, kind of like the texture I mentioned earlier, it's not like a super craggy, rocky nightmare on the inside of it. And it also, given the fact that it's full of loose mud, it's like kind of like a fun place to go. There's a lot of slides built into it. Also, it's only 1,400 feet long, so you can kind of explore it in like a chill Sunday, basically. So as a result of that, this became Utah's most popular cave attraction. Some reports said in the initial phases when it was first discovered, it was attracting 25,000 visitors a year. Eventually, they cut down to like 5,000 or so visitors a year. But in 2004, a group of Boy Scouts went into the cave, and one of them, this 13-year-old boy, he got stuck in a part of the cave known as the birth canal. So he ended up needing
Hate that.
he ended up needing professional rescuing, which did occur, but it also resulted in the cave being closed to the public out of safety concerns. So this is 2004. So due to public demand, the state agency that owns and is responsible for the cave, they decided to reopen it on May 18th of 2009. They said they took safety precautions and that's why they're going to reopen it. But really, it just sounds mostly that people were just fucking pissed off that this thing was closed and like, fine, we'll open the cave. We know it's the most popular cave in the city or the state. All they did was they did like permits. It was like, how's a permit going to save you? Like, you just paid the $17 for the permit. Anyways, so let's get into the layout of Nutty Putty Cave. So the main entrance to the cave is just a hole in the ground, and it's a 15 feet shaft that you climb down to get to the floor of the cave. Upon entering the cave, you would run into what's called the big slide, which is literally a 45-foot long slide section that you can literally slide down.
It's like nature is trying really hard to tell you not to do that.
What, the 15-foot drop that would break your legs if you fell?
Like nature's like, don't come in here. I'm gonna make it really hard and scary. So like, don't do it. But people do it anyway.
Taylor, I was Googling caverns and caves that you can explore in Texas, and I think I might have to do this.
That's cool. I think that we should start a new podcast called Underground with Taylor and Fars. And I'll go underground in cities and you go underground in caves. and then see who dies first.
You know what's funny is you bring that up because I was researching this cave that's in like 20 minutes from where I'm at right now. And I was researching it. It's like a really popular attraction and people go there all the time. But it had mentioned that parts of the cave just open because sinkholes form underneath. I was like, how do you know it's
No,
not going to happen when you're on top of it?
1000%.
Anyways,
No, you're talking.
okay, so you get this big slide section, and it's literally a slide. And after exploring that is where most people who are just recreational, touristy kind of people, they'll call it quits and head out of the cave. If you want to keep going, you can go down a section that I mentioned earlier, the birth canal.
You go
So,
through a birth canal once, and that's
and
it.
that's it. Never again.
Never again.
So this was a super tight passage that was like very claustrophobia inducing, and it was mostly reserved for more experienced cavers. That's the
Hmm.
premise here. So our main person for this event, again, this guy named John Edward Jones. He was an adventurous guy. He'd been caving a lot. He hadn't actually been to Nutty Putty before, but his family's been there and done that. And so he's of the class of individuals who's an adventure seeker, I would call him.
Hmm.
He was 26 years old in 2009 and a medical student who was married to a woman named Emily, who was pregnant, and he had also just had his first daughter, Lizzie. So,
Oh no.
yeah, he went to school in Virginia, but his family lived in Provo, Utah, and that's why they were there because this all was going down on November 24th. So they were there for Thanksgiving. They were there to
Hmm.
announce to his parents that they were pregnant again. She was only 2 months pregnant. And so that was the entire point. So he and a group of friends, including his brother, they decide they want to go explore Nutty Putty. And despite not having personal experience with Nutty Putty, other people in his group had been there before. And so he felt like he could take it. Like I said, he was an adventurous guy. And he
Hmm.
decided that he wanted to go through that challenging section called the birth canal. So this part of the cave tightens down to about 18 inches and it pins the person's arm to their sides and makes it like a very, very slow route where you kind of are exhaling air out of your chest so that you can keep going deeper, which is like a bad
Don't
sign.
do
It's a
that.
bad sign. So John starts going down the birth canal head first with his arms pinned to his side. And he's a relatively big dude. He's over 6 feet tall. He's 200 pounds. And so this was a pretty tight squeeze for him. He gets to a point where he realizes he can't actually go any further. It was just too tight. And it's at this point he realizes that he also can't go backwards anymore. He was stuck, nearly completely upside down vertical in a pocket that was 10 inches wide and 18 inches high. What this was the scene as was described by people who later would find him say it looked like he was swallowed by the rock. So here's a problem. John wasn't in the birth canal. John was in a section of the cave nobody went to. It was known as Ed's Push. It had been explored by this guy in 2000 named Ed Martineau, who was a professional caver. And it was essentially a no-go zone. He took the wrong turn. He was trying to get
Oh
to the
no.
birth canal, and he went one step further and went down this section that was largely unexplored. So John's brother Josh, who was with him, discovered him in this upside down position, and he tried to push him out. He like put his feet up again. He went in feet first instead of head first, and so he was trying to use his feet to kind of like push his foot up a little bit, and then maybe like leg press him up. He moved him a little bit, wasn't enough. He talked to his brother, trying to calm him down, and then he makes a break for it, and he calls rescue services. And around 100 people assemble an hour and a half after they had first entered the cave to try and rescue John. So initially, the rescue was let's just try and pull him out. That obviously was not working. Then they
Hmm.
decided, hey, why don't we try and destroy the rocks around him with explosives or with chipping through. And then it was determined that doing that was likely to cause potentially the cave collapsing or otherwise killing John even more quickly.
Hmm.
They decided that they were going to start using a rope and pulley system to go through tie a rope and pulley system from outside all the way to John to try and pull him out that way. So this was a problem given how tight the passageway was, and it was said that to construct the pulley system itself took about an hour for each piece of equipment to move from the top to where it had to be affixed for John to be able to kind of get winched out.
So how long does it take to get there? Like how far in is he?
He was, it was, I think he was 190 feet from the entrance, something like that.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it wasn't far, but you just couldn't do anything. I mean, if you saw, so one picture I saw of one of the rescuers, John's not in it, but one of the rescuers took a picture and he has his hand in front of him like this, like if anybody like is stretching like their fingers from side to side,
Mm-hmm.
and he's touching the ceiling and the floor of the cave at the same time. So
Okay.
there's no maneuverability is a problem.
Right.
Only six of the over 100 people were actually able to get to John, with the most consequential one being a woman named Susie Matola, who was pretty small. She was 5'3", so she was the one who
Mm-hmm.
could more easily get to him. She was with the sheriff's search and rescue team, and basically she was there to assess his situation and really to offer emotional support because this guy was like in distress, like in really, really bad distress, as you can imagine.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It was quickly determined that, like I said, chipping away the rocks around John wasn't going to be an option either because there just wasn't that much time. So by the time they'd finished putting together this rope and pulley system, he was down there for around 20-ish hours or so. And at this point, it was excruciatingly painful. Like all the blood in his head, all the blood in his body was in
Right.
his head. His legs had no blood in it, and I listened to this one doctor talk about, which was your body's just not built to live like that. It can't
Right.
live in that position. So what they ended up doing was they ended up constructing this pulley system, and they affixed the rope to John's leg to kind of try and hoist him out. They were able to get him up a little bit, and it was enough where they could kind of like winch him out up a little bit. It was enough for them to be able to kind of give him some water. They could, attach communication devices to him so that he could talk to people better than being with his face down in the rocks. They couldn't go much further because his feet were hitting the ceiling. The ceiling above him was only 12 inches above where his feet were. And so while they were assessing what to do, the pulley system ripped and it dropped John back down. The break actually also shattered the jaw of a rescuer who was standing next to it.
Mm-hmm.
And it also almost severed his tongue. To
Well,
make matters worse for John, when they dropped him back in, they didn't drop him back in, the pulley broke. But when he was dropped back in, he landed further. And at this point, he's fully on his head. So if you look at
oh,
pictures of him originally, he is you can't see pictures of it's schematics. You can't see an actual picture of him, thank God. But he's actually his head's down on the rock. It's his chest that's being compressed. His shoulders in his chest, or it's wedged in there. But this
okay.
time he fell further in, and his head was on the rock as well.
Oh God.
So by this point, things are getting more and more desperate. Like I said, the doctor that was consulted at the scene said that you could reasonably expect a human being to stay alive for 8 hours in this position, and we're like around hour 20 or so.
Wow.
Uh, the only other option they could think of was just break his legs. They're like, just break his
Right.
legs and then rope him out that way, or pull him out that way. And they determined that if we did that, he's gonna die anyways. Like he's gonna die of shock and horrible agony because his body's not doing good. Like if they thought to do that originally, then it could have worked because his body wasn't so weak that he couldn't handle the breaking the legs. But at this point, they're like, if we do this, he's gonna go into shock and kill
Oh
him.
my God.
And then it was determined really like they decided like, look, rescuing him is impossible. Like it's literally impossible. He's like there's nothing that can be done at this point. All they could really do was talk to him to kind of alleviate his despair. They had his family there, like on the outside of the cave, talking to him through like a radio. And his last words were to his wife. He said, "I love you." And then he died 27 hours after getting stuck on November 26th, which was Thanksgiving Day.
Oh my God.
So he was pronounced dead only because somebody went in there and they checked his feet for a pulse, which I guess you can do. And
Mm-hmm.
it was like, yeah, he died. They assumed, which is a fair assumption, that he died of some level of respiratory distress and cardiac arrest because of how
Hmm.
hard his heart was working. Officials concluded that rescue would be to take his body out of there, would just be way too dangerous. Like you're more likely to lose another person down there. We'd have to basically shred his body up just to get him out anyway. So why even bother
Right.
doing this? We're just going to deliver a pile of bones to his family. They decided the best way to deal with this was basically to blow a rock formation in this part called Ed's Push and just bury his body in the rubble, which is what they did. And then
Oh my
they
God.
poured concrete in the opening so that nobody can ever go inside ever again. Is that scary?
Yes, he's just like his body's just like in there encased in concrete.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Is that scary? Like just oh
That's so
God.
scary. What are these pictures I'm Googling? What is real? Are any of these pictures real? Like the picture of him like smiling, that's just him in another part of the cave? Like the
So
picture of his boots sticking out, is that real?
I haven't seen that. John Edwards Jones. Let's see what you're getting. No. Wait, maybe that is real. Could that be real?
I don't know.
I didn't think they would publish real pictures of that.
Well, there's like a couple different ones with like different feet, so who knows? I mean, they publish a picture of the dead guy up on Mount Everest all the time, you know?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But I also know that they ripped off his jeans in the middle of this process or whatever
Hmm.
pants he was wearing because they thought at one point they thought they would just douse him in like oil, like vegetable oil, and maybe get him out that way. And so they undressed his top part that they could access. So any pictures of his legs, if those are
Oh,
his legs,
right.
that must have been early on. So what ended up happening was so his wife Emily Jones, she like I said, she was 2 months pregnant when this all went down. She ended up giving birth to their child 7 months later. She gave an interview, and it was about 5 years after this incident happened, where she'd mentioned that she'd resolved to never remarrying. Eventually, her brother introduced her to a friend of his named Donovan Sanchez. They would marry 4 years after John's death. They would end up getting another. They would end up having another child together. And I mean, I looked them up on Facebook. Like they're on Facebook, and they like look like they're like the sweetest. The guy is a teacher for Teach for America, and she like runs a
Aw,
photography company and like illustrates children's books. It's like
cute.
they're like very Mormon in like the
Yeah,
sweetest,
yeah,
most
yeah.
possible way. And oh yeah, I thought this was interesting. Donovan, when he was gonna ask Emily to marry him, asked Emily's parents and John's parents for their permission. So
Oh, that's sweet.
yeah, what a horrible, horrible, excruciatingly, unbelievably painful way to die.
I can't believe he even got in there. Like, what was he thinking? I don't want to blame the victim here, but like, what the fuck are you doing?
So what happens when you go down the birth canal is there's a spot where you can eventually turn around. And that's what most people do. They go down to a certain section, and then if they wanted to, they go further towards what I think is called the aorta. There's like another tight thing after the birth canal. But before you get to that section, it opens up so you can actually turn around and go back up the way you came and then get up to the big slide. They assume that's what he thought he was doing because he said he's
Hmm.
going down the birth canal, and then he kind of he thought that that section where he was going into Ed's push was the last push before he was able to kind of turn around. So
Mm,
yeah, bad bad guess.
I hate it.
Yeah, there's a movie they made about this. I actually only learned about this because I went to his widow's Facebook page, and she had posted this movie. I think it's called The Last Descent,
Yeah,
and
I see it. I'm looking at it.
it's like a Mormon Christian movie,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and like if you read the plot, it part of it is a little bit spooky because part of it is because so many times he like black out. There's big chunks where he was blacked out. By the way, like he was like he fade in and out of consciousness, then he'd come to and like be aware of what's going on. Um, but in the movie, the plot that I read about it was that at one point he blacks out, he wakes up, and he realizes that he's like on top of the rock instead of inside of it. And then he like turns around, he goes outside, and then he realizes there's nobody there, and he like, oh my God, I died. And he realizes he was dead, and he goes back in the cave. I was like, man, that's like a really, I don't know, spooky.
Definitely haunting the shit out of that cave.
So creepy. There's a
I
body
wouldn't,
just sitting
yeah.
there.
Ugh.
But there's a really cool cave system near me, and I think I'm gonna go check it out.
Okay.
It's free too.
I'm sure it's free. Free is to, it's free because someone's died there yet. And then it'll be $17. Like you were saying.
Yeah, let's hope they don't name a part of a cave after me. I mean, that's the interesting thing is like you take out like an organ and you get named after an organ, but you got to die in a cave to get named after the cave. It's not
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah.
Have you heard this story before?
I think I've definitely seen that like image before.
Yeah.
Like the diagram of him just like totally upside down in there. Yeah.
Yeah, the way his arms were pinned is I think it was his left arm was on his stomach, like he was just pushed into his stomach, and then
Yeah.
his other arm was behind him. There's nothing he could. God,
Did
so,
he have the a helmet light or was it dark?
no, he had a helmet light. Yeah,
Probably didn't
it
see
doesn't
anything.
help that much. I mean, you're in
No,
a
I know, but like
cave.
if it was just like totally dark.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's a terrible story. But I mean, God, just I would have just. I was thinking like, why didn't they just like when they first found him? Why didn't they just like inject him with something to like knock him out and then break his legs and then even if you just shred all his skin coming out of there on the rocks, like who gives a shit? Like at least you're out and
Yeah.
then you can just heal from it.
Yeah. I
But
think knocking him out, I mean, as a doctor, I think knocking him out makes sense. Um, because I Wikipedia'd appendixes earlier today. So I feel like I know a lot. But I feel like that would make him like not tense up and easier to squish around.
yeah, yeah. I think by the time they realized how dire the situation was, they were like, everything we do is gonna kill him. It
Ugh.
sounds from what I read of the rescue reports that they were like, we just knew this wasn't gonna happen, and he was still alive, so we just tried, but it wasn't. We weren't gonna get anywhere with this.
Right. It's
Everything
not
we
gonna be
could have
like,
done
see
would
you,
have killed
buddy.
them. Yeah,
Good
yeah.
luck to you in your time of need. Yeah. Ugh.
Got to make Thanksgiving rough going forward.
I know
Um,
for real. It's gonna ruin the day. Someone had worked really freaking hard on like some appetizers that were never eaten.
I know I was wondering that. I was like, if it was me, would I go back and just like snack on some ham? Could I? Would that be weird?
That I feel like the next day, could you have a turkey sandwich? Could you have an entire turkey?
Why not? Yeah, go
Yeah,
nuts.
I feel like you can. But maybe after, maybe just like the one, and then later you'd be like, I don't know, celebrate Thanksgiving in October.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
But
awful.
um,
Yeah, don't do,
anyways,
don't, don't do that.
yeah, that's my story.
Obviously you've seen the Descent a bunch.
Oh God, yeah, like one of the best horror movies ever.
The part where she's in that little tight spot, and her friend goes, "The worst thing that can happen to you has already happened to you. You have to get through this." You know? I'm like, what is this? Who does this? What is wrong with you people?
Yeah, yeah. Which is weird. It's like you don't actually need to make that situation more scary. It's already pretty damn scary.
Yeah,
But I love those movies.
I know they're so good. The second one's pretty good too.
I never
How
saw
many are
the
there?
second one.
It's the same woman. She like comes back and does it again. Oh yeah, and there's like it's good. I think I watched maybe in the past year.
Sweet. So yeah, that's my story. Gave you two short ones today. But that's fine. Like maybe y'all will like short ones more than full length size. Jeez, whatever.
Whatever. Let us know.
Whatever. We're tired. All right, we're
We're so
tired.
tired. I went out last night. My feet hurt. I did all that dancing. Honestly, like not even like I have very comfortable dancing shoes, but my feet still hurt. I mean, they're very tall, but um when I'm like out of my house for like a day, like my feet hurt just from having to wear shoes, like as a thing. 'Cause I just don't wear shoes very often.
Yeah.
Like I'm barefoot all the time. And even though we have concrete floors, but my husband wears inside shoes with like a foot pad and all the things, but I never wear shoes.
No, me neither. I've noticed that like my big toe starts like the nail starts like hurting. Like it's like digging into my skin when I wear my
I'm like,
Hokas.
I just want to stay home. What is this? You make me even put shoes on.
Taylor, I start to question whether we would have survived if COVID didn't happen and we had to actually go to work again.
I honestly don't know.
It'd be
That's such a good
rough.
question.
It'd be
And that
rough.
alternate universe is not great.
No,
Yeah,
no.
yeah, yeah.
Sweet. Do you have anything to read off
I
for
do.
the? All right.
I do. I have a message from Nadine. You know how you and I were talking about where money goes for different charities?
Yes.
I'm just going to read the whole thing. It's like 2 paragraphs. She says, "Hello. I used to be a professional fundraiser and subsequently spent a lot of time studying philanthropy in general. There's no clear way to define what actually goes to the cause. It sounds good on the surface, but it's essentially meaningless. I'm not sure if people are picturing cash being handed directly to poor people or what, but this phrase has no definition. What we count would we count the salary of the food bank's cleaning staff as going directly to the cause? The cost of the desk the mental health worker sits at? Nobody knows. It's a garbage measure. It would make more sense to judge organizations by effectiveness, but this is almost impossible to do. Again, no agreed upon measurements, super complex issues with myriad players. Often the impacts are tough to trace in terms of causality, especially for advocacy, all of which eventually led me to become disillusioned with the whole shebang. Philanthropy is mostly a shadow government, but without even the accountability of elected leaders. It gives rich people even more power than they already have over what issues to get love, and is usually pretty ineffective. That's my Jada perspective. Take it or leave it.
I
So
love it. I
yeah,
love it. I
yeah,
also heard this from this other podcast I listened to where the guy worked for like the UN or something, and he mentioned how it annoying it was to the actual people doing the work when like celebrities would get
yeah,
involved because they're like, and now we gotta like all this work that we know should get prioritized in a certain way, we have to reshuffle the priority because now this other issue has the attention because Bono decides that he wants to write a song about it, you know?
right. Totally. Like my sister works at Awesome Pets Alive, and the like post office did a thing where they made a stamp with a dog on it, and they were like, "We're gonna announce it in your parking lot," and they were like, "Okay." So
We're
they had to like do
busy.
all this stuff, and they had to like host this huge event. And they're like, "I don't care about your stamp. I'm not gonna get any money for the stamp." Like everyone knows we love animals. Stop it. But they had to do it.
Yeah.
Kind of
Yeah.
annoying.
Yeah, let those people do their jobs and
Yeah,
thank them, just thank them. That's
yeah,
enough.
yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you, Nadine. Thanks, everyone who listens and sends us stuff. We appreciate it. Doomtofailpod@gmail.com. You can Instagram message us, Facebook message us on all the socials at doomtofailpod. On YouTube, you can comment on our videos, all that good stuff.
Perfect. Well
We want,
said.
we want to hear from you.
Awesome. And yeah, I guess that's it. Thanks, Taylor.
Thanks,
Putting
Raj.
cut off.